My guests today are Key Jefferys and Chris McCabe. The two gentlemen are the co-founders of SESH, which is an encrypted messaging app. One of the ideas is to minimize the collection of user metadata, but there's a bit more to it as well. Welcome to the show, Key and Chris.
Thanks for having us on, Andy.
It is a pleasure. Let's do what we do at the beginning of the show, gentlemen, and it'd be cool if we could just get a little bit of, I guess, personal and professional backstory from the two of you before we dive into the world of SESH. So, Key, why don't we start with you? Just, give us the brief intro.
For sure. So I'm one of the technical co-founders of SESH. So we started the project in 2018, which is quite some time ago. There's not too many projects that are still left kicking around and still building and growing at this point in the game. It's nearly 7.5 years. My background is more of a computer science background. So I was studying university at the time, computer science course. And I think one of my lecturers mentioned offhand that like Bitcoin was an interesting use case of applied cryptography. So I started digging into Bitcoin, started going to a few meetups here in Melbourne. And that's when I started to meet some of the other co-founders, including Chris of SESH. And we wanted to build this protocol, which was, decentralized, privacy preserving, and gave a lot of security to users. So in 2018, that was really when everything kicked off. I deferred from university. It's been a very long deferment, 7.5 years at this point. So I think I can't go back to university at this stage, unfortunately, or I'd have to start again. But yeah, it's been a wild ride, and seeing where we've gotten to is really exciting. I'll pass it over to Chris.
Awesome. Thank you, Key. Yeah, jump in, Chris.
Yeah, let's go. So yeah, I was introduced to Bitcoin back in 2011, and it caught my excitement. I was definitely the person at a party for many years after that point in time telling everyone about Bitcoin. And the response was always, what's the point? Like, we have fiat, we have cash. Like, why are you even thinking about this? But yeah, so I was a bit disheartened after a little while because nobody would be nerds with me about it. And then in 2017, I made the decision to sort of go all in on crypto, started getting to software development, website designs, and going to meetups, crypto meetups at the time in Melbourne. And that's where I met the other co-founders. We came together an idea. And when you have people who have a lot of energy and drive, they magnetize together. And that was what formed the team that is today. And we've been building it ever since. And yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Well, I suppose it'd be useful, guys, just to understand, why SESH, why an encrypted messaging app. So we kind of understand the need for privacy and the way that most of the messaging apps that people use are not really ideal from a security point of view, from a personal data point of view, all sorts of reasons. But why was it that you guys kind of identified a need for this, maybe, as you said, back in 2018? What was the original idea that this was a path to go down?
Well, like when you looked at the messaging applications that were available in 2018, we were still seeing kind of the early stages of encrypted messaging applications. So Signal was around, WhatsApp was around, Telegram was kind of in its infancy. But when you looked at these applications, none of them really provided a high level of privacy and security. So they all used centralized servers, so central points of data collection. Even if messages were end-to-end encrypted, there was still metadata associated with people's messages. So when you connect to a server, you're connecting with your IP address, you're sending a message there, and the recipient is also receiving that message with their IP address. So there's a lot of metadata that the server gets access to. So the first point that we looked at was, okay, let's decentralize this. Let's not have a single central server. We can build this network that is, using the kind of crypto ideas to build a decentralized network where you can store data. The second point was basically all of the messengers at that point were still using phone numbers, which, was a legacy system in 2018 and is even more of a legacy system in 2025. I can't believe people are still using phone numbers, because when you use a phone number as your identity in the network to send messages to one another, you have so many problems SIM swapping, being a major problem, major attack that's happened to a lot of users, where users will socially engineer your telecom provider to switch out your SIM, or at least get access to your phone number and receive verification codes, and then they can take over your accounts that way. But from a privacy perspective as well, phone numbers, we use them in every context. Basically, every service that requires you to sign up requires a phone number now. So there's like this there's these databases all over the internet of your phone number linked with your address, linked with your email address, linked with your business potentially. And that all reduces the level of privacy for a messaging application when you sign up with a phone number. So Session took away the requirement to have a phone number and just uses this, public identifier, which is randomly generated on the network, not linked to any real world identity. And the third point was, again, around that metadata point. You were connecting to these centralized servers in the case of WhatsApp and Telegram and giving them your IP address. And same on the recipient side, we decided to add onion routing to the network so that when you connect to those decentralized servers, you're actually not giving up your IP address to the server that you're storing messages on or that you're retrieving messages from. So it was kind of all of those things together. We were inspired by a lot of technology that was around at the time, like Tor and Bitmessage and some of the private cryptocurrencies as well, which allowed you to build an incentive system around this network. It was really a combination of all of those things.
Yeah, very nice. And look, I mean, the phone number thing, you're exactly right. And I just noticed last night on my phone, I suddenly started getting these weird text messages that said, would be like 38234 is your Instagram private number. Instagram will never text you or DM you. But I was getting these weird texts, and then you go into your text messages and they're not there, but somehow they were just coming up on the, anyway, they stopped going. Apple must have sorted it out, but it's just, that obviously comes from, as you say, it's like just one of those random lists of phone numbers, email addresses, and personal data, and there's just so many of them. And if you've been around on the internet for 20 years or so, like myself, it's just amazing that how many different places your data can pop up and how vulnerable that can be. But speaking of, messaging apps and phone numbers, even Telegram, which is sort of supposed to be, semi-secure, every, month or so, you get an automatic message from Telegram, don't you? Which says, is blah, blah, blah still your phone number? Please confirm, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Telegram has really marketed itself excellently, I would say. They market themselves as a very secure messaging application, despite not using end-to-end encryption in most conversations. You need to go into like a secret chat to actually have end-to-end encryption. So 99% of the messages that you probably send on Telegram are completely unencrypted. So the server that they go to can read them. So if Pavel, gets arrested by the French government, theoretically, none of this happened in real life, and decides to give over those encryption keys, then now the French government could potentially read all of your messages. So that they themselves, like even stepping away from just the phone number requirement, have a lot of security issues. And then when you add in the phone number requirement, the fact that if someone knows your phone number or it was leaked in one of these databases that we were talking about before, that they can essentially tie your Telegram, handle to everything that you've ever sent in a public group or everything that you've ever, received. So it's really moving away from that system, which gives people a lot more privacy and security. And that's what Session is doing. It's like dumping the requirement for a phone number, end-to-end encrypting all of the messages that are sent through Session so that you can have peace of mind when you use Session, that no one's like behind your back watching what is going on and what you send and receive.
And there's a fundamental difference between what Session delivers and what other messaging applications deliver. Whereas we never have access to users' data at all. And you see companies like Google setting out to be, don't be evil. And then they sort of change their position after they have so much data. And you're so tempted into monetizing and using that data in lucrative ways. Whereas from the outset, we're unable to read people's messages. We never have access to them at all. So there's no opportunity for us to switch that and then start using people's data against them. It's a fundamental difference between us and pretty much everything else that's out there today.
Yeah, that's a good point, Chris. Like, in all of these other cases like Signal, Telegram, WhatsApp, they run the servers in the network which store people's messages. even if those messages are encrypted, they still get a lot of metadata. Session's completely different in that it has a network of 2,200 nodes, which is run by community operators all around the world that actually store the encrypted messages. So as Chris said, we don't have access even to users' encrypted messages.
So how does that, and this is what you described this before as onion routing, right? So that's, is that like, that's kind of how Tor works, right? Is that, just explain, you don't need to go too deeply into the technicals, but just give people, for people who don't know, just a sense of, yeah, how that works in terms of that, that network, how it's decentralized, what is onion routing, and yeah, who are the people that are running these nodes?
Yeah, so there's kind of two systems that are working side by side with each other. One is the routing layer, and that uses onion routing, which is, as you said, developed initially by Tor. It's, if you imagine it simply as chaining VPNs together with an added layer of encryption. So instead of just going to the VPN servers and then the VPN sends your traffic to the website you want to go to, you actually chain 3 different hops together. And then you send your message, it goes through those 3 hops and then lands at the destination. And same when you're receiving a message as well. You create this path and you request a message and it comes back to you. So that's on the routing side. And then there's also on the storage side. So the same decentralized network of 2,200 nodes that is used in onion routing is also used to store messages temporarily. So for 14 days, messages are stored on this network and then they're deleted. So you get both the message storage and the routing of messages is completely decentralized. In terms of the individuals that actually run those nodes, it's people all around the world. It's like there's probably the biggest countries are Western Europe, so like Germany, Netherlands, the US, a little bit in there as well. But the distribution is like pretty wide across, 30, 40 different countries. And the operators, there's hundreds of different operators. We don't like KYC the operators, so anyone can come and run a session node, but you need to stake a certain amount of cryptocurrency to do that. And just based on like how many operators there are in like some of our public channels and the people that I've spoke to, usually it's like people that are sometimes session users. They start using session, they really like session. And then session is actually the only real messaging application where you can run the infrastructure of session itself. If I'm a really hyped Telegram user, I can't go and run the Telegram messaging servers, right? But on session, it really encourages people who enjoy using the service to get involved in the infrastructure and to receive a reward for doing that as well. So a lot of these operators are people who've used session previously or privacy interested individuals who've staked and are running the network infrastructure.
And we should point out that there is a token, and the token is SESH. I love the name. That's a great name. The SESH token has a certain ring to it, I think. And funnily enough, Telegram, they did try, what did they do? They did an ICO. They did something, didn't they? Where they got quite far down the track, raised a lot of money, but then regulators turned on them and said, no, you can't do this. Anyway, that aside, yeah, you guys do have a token, the SESH token. Please tell us more.
So the SESH token is aimed to launch next month. So we actually have a token, like a privacy token that is running the network. We were very ambitious with privacy when we kicked off. So there's currently a token called Oxen. We're moving across to Session token over the next month or so and moving our infrastructure across to Arbitrum. So the token is really essential for the ecosystem. Without a token, we'd just be a centralized messaging app or a completely trust-based decentralized network. And when that happens without skin in the game, people can try and manipulate the network and cause some issues for the platform. So Session network. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a kerfuffle here. Session token is also part of the utility that rewards the nodes for the operating, is required for nodes to stake, and it's also utilized to enable on-chain like premium features and subscription models that we look to roll out over the coming months as well in the Session messaging application.
Yeah, I think a really important point to pick out there is that Session as it exists today would not exist without the token. I know that there's a lot of like kind of applications out there which have lots of users and then they kind of tack a token onto the side of things. I would say like this is a little bit like what Telegram did with the TON token that they have. it's not actually used in the running of the infrastructure for Telegram. That part's all still centralized, right? Whereas with Session and SESH, the token is actually used to stake to nodes and then to receive rewards for running that node network. So the network of 2,200 nodes wouldn't exist if not for the Session token. And then there's this tieback mechanism between the users of Session and then also the token as well. So when users purchase premium features that upgrade their storage or provide more customizability, that goes back to the network and then is able to keep the network sustainable over time as well. So it's not something that we're just tacking onto the side of things.
And is there going to be some kind of sale or launch event or anything like that? How does it work?
Yeah, so I mean, we just recently wrapped up a Legion community building process. So that was over the course of 14 days, I think. And that got people involved in the community and also allowed them to, get involved in the token if they wanted to as well. There has been some sales before that as well. And then you've obviously got the existing Oxen holders, and there's a process to transition those existing Oxen holders to Session. So that network of 2,200 nodes, which right now is running on Oxen, there's this entire migration process which allows you, if you hold Oxen, to convert those into Session tokens, and then also if you're running a node on the network currently, to convert the points that you've earned from running nodes over the last couple of years into Session tokens when the Session token launches as well. So yeah, there's been a big focus on how do we get the community involved as much as possible.
Of course. It sounds like, you guys have been going since 2018. So it's a while now. You're launching this new token, and that's going to presumably incentivize more and more people to get involved from a node operator point of view. Where would you say that you're at? I mean, I know there's kind of, it's just a journey. It's not a destination, but in terms of that, product rollout to getting to somewhere where you feel like the application has legs, you have product market fit, and you can go into full on, user acquisition mode. Where would you guys say that you are on that journey?
Yeah, it's been a long journey. We built a lot of things ourselves, so it really took a long time to build into the unknown in terms of our infrastructure, applications, and how it all works together. At the moment, we have 1.2 or over 1.2 million monthly active users around the world. So I think that's some of the highest traction in any Web3 application that exists today. But we're not just going for Web3 users. When people use Session, they often don't even realize it's a Web3 product. It's just a really secure messaging application. Our next phase is really, driving user growth and really focusing on power users and bringing out premium features into the application. So user growth is always essential for us. And then bringing in revenue that supports the ecosystem long term as well. Yeah, we've been really focusing on US market. That's our key market. And then Western Europe, where people really seem to value privacy and understand what your data is worth a lot. So that's where we've had the most traction, and we just want to keep doubling down. We did have 3 years of exponential growth, which is amazing. We did have a little technical challenge, and like all good startups, you sort of make 10 steps forward, 1 step back. And now we're back into that nice growth trajectory again at the moment.
Yeah, I will also just pick up on one of the points that Chris was saying as well. We have 1.2 million monthly active users, or, a little bit above that amount. And we haven't done any kind of, a lot of crypto companies do this thing where they'll incentivize the users of the application with points or some sort of airdrop or something like that. Session hasn't done any of that, and it hasn't really spent any money on advertising in years. All of that growth has been organic. So it's been from people recommending Session to other people downloading the application, using it with their friends and family. So that on that side, it's very easy to get to 10 million monthly active users if we just put a points program into the Session application and allow people to start earning points, and those points are going to convert to some future airdrop. But we have always been focused on building actual user bases, people who want the application, and then also people that would be willing to buy one of those kind of premium features in the future as well, so that we can keep the application sustainable. It doesn't make sense to grow up to 10 million users if all of the users are going to leave when you give them an airdrop, for example. So it's been quite good for us as well, because it's allowed us to communicate with our users and actually understand what they want as well, rather than just having millions of users who are just looking, for an airdrop.
Yeah, makes sense. One of the things that I'm sure has been a challenge for you guys is, I guess communicating to people the need for a privacy focused messaging app, but also, getting them to onboard without a phone number and things like that. And you say, yeah, it's not necessarily for Web3 people or crypto natives, but I'm sure it's more. Do you find it's more of a challenge to people that maybe are outside of Web3 or aren't used to that kind of world or culture, and for them it's like a different way in?
I would say this.
Go ahead, Chris.
I would say the sign-up process for Session is actually easier and faster than any other messaging app, because you don't have to do the 2FA with phone numbers. It's just
nice.
Go.
Yeah.
And then once you start making a few friends, this is the difference. Like, your phone number is now sort of a public key in that relative term. And then once you start making a few friends, your account now has value to you. And then we say, hey, you should store that seed phrase now, because you're actually using the application. For instance, we had it initially, you'd open up Session and it would say, store the seed phrase. And the grandmas would be like, what is a seed phrase? I don't know what to do with this. And then your really technical people like, oh my God, this is a seed phrase. I had to stop here and write this down really securely. But really, it doesn't matter. Like, the goal is to pick up the application quickly, understand it, start connecting. And once you've got that value, then it's worth doing the sort of, write down your seed phrase. So we're just trying to make it as simple as we can. We would love to make it even easier to connect with people with things like deep links or, say, community-driven growth. There's so many avenues to approach it, and maybe even implementing with other applications if there are like standards that we can API into. People can cross-communicate with other applications, could also be a smooth way to onboard mass users. But yeah, it seems like word of mouth and privacy people and first movers are generally the ones that are dragging all their friends onto the application. It can be difficult for some, but for many, it seems to have worked out. And I would say the experience of Session today and how smooth it is after this time of polish and getting to this point is quite exceptional, and it's quite reliable. And it's like much more peace of mind compared to anything else that's out there today. So yeah, we just keep driving and pushing that mission and trying to build up that momentum.
Yeah, I'd say too, like, we haven't had as much difficulty as I would have thought convincing people to download Session. I think a lot of people see that there is this gap in the market. They want a messaging application that is more private, and the download numbers have proven that there's millions and millions of downloads that we get on a yearly basis, and that's been building up over time. The harder thing to get someone to do is to be actually retained and to use the messaging application in the long term and to use it regularly as well. So like, there's a lot of Session users that will use Session just for, particular type of communication where they want to be more private. If they're, say, sending a credit card or a password, it's about converting those users into, monthly active users and then daily active users, and then driving that adoption through that method, because a lot of people already have Session installed on their phone, and that it hasn't been such an issue to get people to download Session. And as Chris was saying, like, a lot of the things that we've been working on over the past 6 months, 12 months is just making that retention process way easier. So when you onboard onto the application, okay, now you don't need to write your seed phrase down. Making the one-on-one chat experience and the group chat experience way better, so that you don't get spurious message failures, or that you always receive notifications on time. It's those things which will keep people retained over longer periods of time. And I think that's the things that we've been focusing on as well, is like, how do we get everyone who has downloaded Session to become a daily active user of Session?
Yeah, it feels like there's, though, and I'm sure you guys feel this, there's just I mean, the number of potential users is essentially infinite. You know, how many people are there on Earth? But breaking through to the average person, the normie, whatever you want to call them, about the need for, you know, a secure private messaging app, and everyone will have, you know, their own idea of or need for, you know, a particular use case of why they might need to keep their messaging private. But a lot of people, they just don't care, and they'll say anything in their Instagram DMs, you know. Do you find that frustrating?
I actually don't find it as frustrating, because I think what people are saying, you know, when they say, oh, I don't really care about my privacy or security, is more about the user experience of the application.
Yeah.
The way that Telegram has grown so large, and the way that WhatsApp, I think, has grown so large, is partially because they have promoted the idea that they are private and secure messaging applications. Now, the reality of, you know, whether they actually are or not, you know, that's a different question. But they've definitely pushed that in their promotional materials a lot.
Same for Apple. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you look at like how Telegram grew, a lot of it was around this like story of Pavel leaving Russia, and you know he wasn't going to compromise users' messages. That's why he left. You know, and I feel safe because, you know, he left and he went to these other countries, and he wouldn't give up user data about Ukrainians in, you know, 2019 or whatever, whenever that situation happened. So I think people are actually naturally attracted towards private and secure messaging applications. The thing that turns them off using those applications day to day is if it doesn't meet the user experience expectations that they have. So like all of the features that WhatsApp has, all of the features that Telegram has, if Session doesn't have one of those features, then they feel like, oh, I'm missing out on something by using this messaging application. Because ultimately the pitch should not really be that, you know, Session is, you know, using all of these technologies to, you know, make you more private and secure. The pitch should be, this is a messaging application which offers everything that you generally would use in a messaging application, but it just so happens that it is more private and secure. And I think like that pitch has been changing over time. Like initially we kind of pitched the idea that, you know, you're a cypherpunk, like this is like the most cypherpunk technology to keep your privacy and security, and really focusing on the tech side. But as like the user experience of the application has gotten better, you know, you're dropping some of that more technical language and just focusing on, you know, this is a messaging application which provides you everything that you want and need. It just so happens that it also protects your privacy and security in a much better way than, say, WhatsApp or Telegram.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, gentlemen, as we start to finish up this part of the podcast, for people listening, and if they're not familiar with Session and they've heard this and they think, wow, I'm going to give Session a go, what is the best way for people to do exactly that? How can they learn more? How can they start to use Session? Where do they download it? All that good stuff. Please explain.
Yeah, so Session's available on every operating system, basically. So Mac, Windows, Linux, iOS, Android. If you go to getsession.org, all of the download links are there. I mean, if you just Google Session as well, it'll be the first thing that pops up, and you can click on it there. Yeah, I would encourage everyone to go and download Session and just try it out with some of your friends and family. And yeah, send us a message or follow us on social media as well. We're on Twitter at Session App, and there's a lot of other social channels as well on our website if you want to find those, and give us a little bit of feedback as well. I think my Session ID is pretty public out there, so you can find it and send me a message on Session and tell me, you know, oh, this thing is fantastic, or I have this bug and I really hate you. I don't mind.
Awesome. All right. Well, gentlemen, it's time to finish up the podcast. And of course, I like to do that by running the guests through what we call the very famous Crypto Conversation hot take round. Are you up for it?
Yep, please.
All right. So what I'm going to do, gentlemen, is I'll just direct a question to you each in turn, since we've got two of you on the show. But there's no right or wrong way to do it. Just give me your honest answers, kind of hot take style to answers to the question. Chris, let's start with you. The question is, where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-chain opportunist spectrum?
And by multi-chain, you just mean alt market versus Bitcoin? Where do I sit on that?
Well,
spectrum?
I just made, it's either it's a multi-chain universe, or you're a Bitcoin maxi, or there's everything in between.
So I sit in between. I like Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin has a value, and I actually think that minimal changes to how Bitcoin operates and what it offers as a value proposition should be the way it is. So I'm a protectionist in terms of just keeping Bitcoin the way it is. Minimal change. Don't try and turn it to Ethereum. Don't try and turn it to anything else. Just keep it as a store of value. On the altcoin, in the altcoin world, I love altcoins that actually do something. I think 99.99999% of them have no value add, but things like what we build, and there's a lot of really cool DeFi, cross-chain swaps, and decentralized technology like Arweave. Like, there's so many serious technologies out there that get drowned out by the noise, and I'm in love with those technologies and those applications, and also a big fan of Bitcoin. So but I'm also have no time for just the noise. So that's where I sit. I'm very open to it all.
I like it. All right. Let's go to Key. Key, what would you say is your firmest conviction crypto opinion?
Wow, that's a big question. Firmest conviction. No, well, this is kind of maybe a little bit of hot take, and maybe a bit depressing as well. But I think we're still very much at the speculation phase of crypto. I think we saw this most recently with kind of the meme coin bubble that happened and popped, that people's attention is really dragged towards where they can build the most financial wealth, or perceive that they can build the most financial wealth. And I don't think we've broken away from that narrative just yet. I really do hope that some of the narratives start changing and we start pushing more towards tokens with utility. So like the top tokens, as well as the ones that are actually building real tech. But I think at the moment we are still kind of in a speculative kind of phase of development.
I can't argue with that. All right. Chris, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. So look, you guys have been building since 2018. That's almost 10 years, but cast your mind forward another 10 years. Anything you like here, but I guess Session, what does it look like in 10 years' time, Chris?
In 10 years' time, I would like it to be the #1 messaging application, full stop. And in terms of areas that we'd like to dive into, in terms of like enterprise, I think that what we can do with the technology can be very valuable towards like medical, legal, like all those industries that are reliant on a centralized server. And in terms of like government perspective as well, a lot of governments operating off foreign-made centralized communication technology, which is, from my perspective, an unacceptable risk. So I see #1 messaging application in the world. Let's do that. And then, hundreds of millions of monthly active users, or billions.
Let's make it happen. I like it. All right. Key, next question is for you. You probably will have heard this quote by sci-fi author William Gibson, who famously said that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people aren't aware of it?
Well, I would have said artificial intelligence, but actually that's quite broadly distributed. Maybe we'll go with quantum computing, which I think is still fairly unevenly distributed in terms of the fact that to run these quantum computers, you need to liquid nitrogen cool yourself down to absolute zero and then run processes there. But I think that's still, somewhat early, but I think we're starting to see some breakthroughs in the quantum computing space, which indicate to me that, this may be the next area of massive development. And it could really change things. Just not just like obviously from a cryptography perspective, like it's very influential because all of the cryptography that we rely on day to day isn't quantum secure. And, with a powerful enough quantum computer, you can basically break the encryption that's used for Bitcoin, for example, banks, the internet. So there's going to have to be a big change there. But I think also it could be really influential for the growth of AI as well, training some of these models on top of quantum computers. They just have the ability to be able to parallelize like operations to, you know, an insane degree. And I think that really could be one of the next leaps that we see in the AI space.
Yes, indeed. Very nicely said, Key. And it brings us nicely as well to our final question. We'll put it to you both. Let's go with you first, Chris. The final question is, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, or a TV show?
Awkwardly, I would put it down to a cartoon of either Futurama or Rick and Morty.
Yep. That's a great answer. I was literally just drinking a cup of tea out of my Rick and Morty teacup not half an hour ago. So Futurama, Rick and Morty, great. Same question for you.
It's probably going to have to be a split between 1984 and The Matrix. Both, you know, extremely influential works. I mean, you'd have to argue that, you know, 1984 at this point is maybe not so much a work of fiction and more, you know, a work of reality, considering what we're seeing in the surveillance space nowadays. I think The Matrix really was ahead of its time in terms of how computers are going to merge with humans, and I think we're starting to see some of that stuff develop now with Neuralink specifically, and these brain kind of brain computer interfaces that we have. So yeah, I think on those two sides, both are influential and important reads and watches.
Great picks. Very much agree. All right. Well, look, gentlemen, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us today. Just to close it out, again, make the case for why people should, go and get involved, download Session. How can they do that? And, what should they do? Shout at your socials, etc. Please proceed.
Yeah, so just type in Session in any web browser and any search engine, and it will probably be the first thing that pops up. Check out the website, download on any app store. It's also APKs on our GitHub as well, if you want to be very private. And start connecting, have fun with it, and give us feedback, whatever you have. We're keen and ready for more community and feedback.
Yeah, shout out to all of the developers out there as well. Session's completely open source, so if you want to start getting involved on the code side, our GitHub's up there, and you can start, looking at some of the issues if you want to solve those. So definitely, if you're a dev, would be interested in chatting with you and getting you involved in the open source ecosystem.
Awesome. Thank you so much, gentlemen. All the best, and bye for now.
Thanks, Andy.